Okay, it's going.
All right, guys. Hello, and thank you for coming. It is quite the full house this afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here in Greenville, North Carolina, the belly of the beast, if you will, right across the street from ECU Health and its Child Sex Change Clinic. I'm Sloan Rackman. I'm the president of Education First Alliance. I'm also an investigative journalist, and you guys are in a news desert. I don't know if you knew that or not, but you're 80 miles away from Raleigh. Raleigh action happens, right? And I think you guys get neglected quite often and maybe aren't being told the full story about what is taking place in your own backyard and in your name. So here I am with the background of what we have been uncovering for the last little while. Now you may think, because you're here, that you're isolated, right? And nobody knows what's going on and no one's paying attention, etc. They very much are. I will tell you that the General Assembly has been a great help helping us get to the bottom of what's going on. And the entire world is watching. Why is that? In the entire world, I'm not sure if we have a documented state, let alone a country, transitioning 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds in the same state. I think we have made history in a way that we never would have wanted to. So I want to give you a little background and walk you through what's going on here. So if we go back to July of 2022, the largest and oldest child sex change clinic in the world closed its doors after 33 years. That'd be the Tavistock Clinic in London. And the reason for that is they were getting their asses sued off. Here's why. They were taking, these are the legal complaints, they were taking autistic children and telling the parents, no ma'am, your child doesn't have a learning disorder. You see, they've got something called gender dysphoria, and you will need to give the child life-altering drugs for that. Or they were fast-tracking children into taking hormones and puberty blockers that doctors said, gee, there's no problem with those. These are completely reversible. And then after 33 years, and 10 years in particular in Europe, the results are in, and it causes catastrophic damage, as you will see. In fact, don't take my word for it. The paper that you have right there that says FDA on it, take a gander at what the Cleveland Clinic says, what the Mayo Clinic says, and the FDA says. But I digress. So that was in July 22. It made headlines everywhere. Everyone was paying attention to it that was in medicine. July 22, on an 8.5-hour plane ride over here to Greenville, that same month, East Carolina University was reaching out to doctors with Planned Parenthood to train them in giving these hormones to children. They're reaching out to other doctors that were castrating 16-year-old children at another hospital in Ohio, I believe. They're reaching out to a program called Fidway Institute that says children should be trans at the age of 3. At the same time they're closing up the clinics in Europe, Greenville, they're opening it up right here at the same time. So I want to tell you about this clinic, this child sex change clinic over here. It was put together with the leaders, the very leaders, the top leaders of ECU. They had a mandatory meeting. We know this from emails, by the way, 3,600 of them. They had a mandatory meeting with the second in command at ECU Health, that'd be Jason Higginson. They had the marketing director. They had, curiously, the money men and women there, the ones that raise corporate donations, the ones that arrange for studies to be done and for the ECU to make money, the ones that were in charge of big donations. They had them there at the meeting. They had 2 department chairs. Who they didn't have is anyone in mental health. That was notably missing from that. So at the same time, in July of 2022, that was ramping up. The names involved in establishing this clinic, funding the clinic, staffing the clinic, and covering it up are going to be named today. We are going to name names today. You deserve the truth. I believe that you've been lied to. and I wonder if you'll be able to figure out the reasons why. Here's how this all started with our team. Beginning about 10 months ago, we learned that there was a safe zone training for Pitt County K through 12th graders. And if you look in the back of your packet, I included four slides for you to see. What caught our attention with our team is that teachers were instructed to teach children from K through 12 that heterosexuality is not normal. That was stressed, and we said, what in the living heck, right? So this training was a spectacle. We received this training, by the way, as a result of a record request that we did get, right? We don't take people's word for it around here. We actually have the proof to back up what we're saying. So we said, well, that's really curious. And who gave this training? None other than the same people that staff the child sex change clinic. Then we realized, we looked into it, we said, well, there appears to be a pride clinic for all ages, the state at all ages, and 4 and up. How did we know? Well, they made an announcement in the newspaper. And at the faculty convocation earlier that year, that means all the faculty come in, rah, rah, sis, boom, bah, here we are for another school year, right? The chancellor was on the stage, all the faculty was in the audience, and they were talking about a clinic, not just a clinic, a beacon in a child sex change desert that is Eastern North Carolina, and how they were going to be a place where children can change their gender behind parents' backs. That was said on stage, it was said on video, and it really alarmed us. Chancellor was sitting right there. We began to interview people on the inside of ECU Health. They do not like this. Some have left, and they are with us. You can best believe, and I will talk about that in a second. We also called not once, not twice, but 3 times to make an appointment at this clinic. We were able to do it all 3 times, and when we offered to give our psychiatric records for a fictitious child named Angel, 13-year-old, they didn't want to take the records. This is reckless and it's terrifying. So we found this practice, and here's why it's terrifying. I mean, for the obvious reasons, right? We found out that they didn't have a lived experience. So pediatric endocrinology is a specialty, right? That's for precocious puberty and other diagnoses, maybe diabetes, things like that. Those are the specialists that are qualified. Here we had people in family medicine that just were like looking things up on the internet, I presume, and say, oh, okay, cool, we're on. Internal medicine and pediatrics. That was terrifying for us. We also found this very upsetting. You've got 3 different programs. You've got internal medicine, pediatrics, family medicine. 29 counties, 29 county service area, over 90 different centers servicing 1.4 million people. These doctors are being trained in something and really focusing on something they have no business focusing on when drug abuse is running rampant here. Heart disease, obviously diabetes, etc. So that really scared us, the fact that the quality of care was being degraded for Eastern North Carolina. Also, ECU is one of the biggest suppliers of family medical doctors across North Carolina. See, North Carolina is almost like Texas. Texas has the most rural community in the country. North Carolina is second, with about 60 counties being rural. When we talk about rural health, we're talking about we have to have access. We have to have people that know what they're doing, right? These are hardworking people, most on Medicare and Medicaid, right? They're not throwaways. They deserve top quality care. We believe everyone was in peril, so we really dug into this story. We knew it was an emergency. So what we did was we did a records request about 3 months ago now for emails that would show us who put the clinic together, why was it put together, how was it put together, what kind of money was used. I mean, things that are the basics, and that, quite frankly, all of you, you deserve to know. You deserve it. So we put in a records request, and we didn't get anything back, which, to be fair, is not extraordinary. When you have something to hide, you stonewall. To the extreme credit of Representative George Cleveland from Onslow County, who backed this request, we received not the 2,900 emails from an allegedly non-existent clinic, right? We received 3,600. And here's what we found. We did our first story last week. Here's what we found. ECU shut down 5 clinics around this same time. 2 family medicine, 1 behavioral health clinic, 1 women's health clinic, and I'm not sure what the other one is. And in Green County, in particular, now seniors have to drive a full 40 minutes to get care in the next center. At the same time they're doing this, they're shutting down 5 clinics. That's in Jewish faith, we call that a shanda. Don't do it, right? It's a terrible thing. So I want to stress that Michael Waldron and others did this for money, as these emails show. It was purely for money. They closed down the clinics. Do you want to take a guess? The stated reason. It wasn't profitable. How dare you, Michael Waldron? It wasn't profitable. So he found something else that was profitable, and I'm going to explain how. Also, I want you to keep in mind, during this time, in July, ECU Health, or June 30th specifically, had lost one of their specialists in adolescent medicine. So this is a big deal, right? They lost a specialist. And in the emails, it shows that ECU Health was trying to replace that specialist with not someone that focused on adolescent health. We have a lot of adolescent health problems, but one that focused on transgender treatment, of cutting off breasts and penises from healthy children. That was their focus, okay? So also, they lost their key autism specialist for pediatrics, and let me talk about that. Her name was Dr. Karen Stiles. She was a specialist, still is, but not here anymore. She left specifically for some of the things we're talking about, but the rate of autism in North Carolina is 1 in 37, according to the CDC. 1 in 37. The mean age of diagnosis is 3 years old. So Dr. Stiles was a specialist in early childhood diagnoses. I tried to get an appointment for my fictitious 3-year-old to get a screening. It's been 7 days, I haven't received a phone call yet. When I tried to make an appointment for my fictitious 13-year-old, it was about an hour, and I could have gone in the next day. Those are the facts. 29 counties. 29 counties. Studies have shown that if you do not intervene before child is 3, or during that process, they will remain low functioning for the rest of their lives. Yeah. So, that was what was going on during this time. So the clinics were closing over in Europe. Instead of focusing on making family medicine doctors, internal medicine doctors, and pediatricians proficient in diagnosing autism at 3 years old, they were making these doctors proficient in diagnosing transgenderism at 3 years old with a rate of exactly 0. 0. Why did they do it? Because they got a big old check. Now, let's talk about what they call gender affirming care, but that we know now is child sterilization, chemical mutilation, and chemical castration. Don't take my word for it. Leave the Cleveland Clinic over me. If you will, please go to that sheet where it says FDA. The Cleveland Clinic, you see where that arrow is pointing? The Cleveland, this is an article, by the way, in a med journal. I think it's like Medscape. The Cleveland Clinic says that puberty blockers, namely Lupron, is given for chemical castration. That is what it says. You will also see that the FDA has a warning on giving this to children who claim to be transgender. I haven't heard about that in the media. Why is that? Why not? That's why I'm here. So that there's something called, it was brain swelling, is what can happen, and it did happen, and it does happen, and it causes blindness in children. So that is what gender affirming care is over there. That's what it is. Okay, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second. So, if this isn't bad enough, and I have to say, I take exception to the Shoot the Messenger campaign that has been going on for the last 10 months, that has spanned from people in the General Assembly to people who like to think of themselves in media and others who have made Sloan Rackman the problem, Epic Times the problem, Fox News the problem, and about a dozen other outlets who have covered it the problem. The problem are the people that I'm talking about right here that have diverted much needed expertise, much needed health care, to doing something that the FDA is giving a black box warning about. That is the subject and should be the subject of critique. So when you also, if some of you have American College of Pediatrics, who is one of our chief partners in exposing this, and has made many statements about what is going on, and says that this is one of the worst cases they've ever seen right across the street. Now, to make it bad enough, Brody Medical School, ECU Health, and the doctors I'm talking about wrote and published a paper on how to spread this treatment in rural communities with telehealth. Cha-ching! Can you imagine diagnosing and treating something like this with telehealth? Oh, by the way, that telehealth is also servicing at least 6 counties in North Carolina schools. The age of consent to receive this treatment is 0. That means they can treat behind the parent's back exactly as they said they were going to do, exactly what they were going to do and planning to do when they said it at the convocation on video in front of the chancellor as he sat there giddy about the new plans. They called it a revolutionary new program. Revolution is exactly right, and it's exactly what it is. So, ECU has a storied history of greed outweighing the care and the treatment of others, and dignity be damned of the people in Eastern North Carolina. I'm going to give you some recent examples. I think it was 2019, ECU physicians reportedly gave $10 million to the building of a football stadium. So again, remember that was 2019, 3 years later? 5 clinics were unprofitable and then closed it down. Also, they begged for money from the General Assembly, all the taxpayers, and got $215 million to add on to Brody Medical School. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. There was also, I believe in 2019 or 2020, a $1.6 million payout to a football coach that left. There was a purchasing of a palatial estate known as the Chancellor's Mansion. I believe that was $1.2 million. When you look at the average working person that ECU claims to serve, I promise you, they will never in their wildest dreams be able to afford that. This is a tale of the have and the have-nots. In 2020, this is interesting. This came from the Treasurer's office, and I think the Treasurer knows a little something about healthcare spending because his office manages the state's health plan. 2020, ECU Health took 155, wow, that's a lot, $155.7 million in COVID relief. And then they experienced a growth that same year of $228 million. Again, that's 2020, that should have lasted them for a while, and yet 2 years later, they're closing clinics down.
What page are you on?
I'm not.
Oh.
Just a moment. Just a moment, we'll get to that thing. Questions at the end, please. And at the same time, they also, that was the same year, they laid off around 100 healthcare workers. At the same time. And in my understanding from internal folks over there, they are still wickedly short-staffed. Okay? While the clinics were starting up, they were closing 5 clinics because they weren't profitable, but let me tell you what was happening. We got a big check from a guy named Jesse R. Peel, LGBTQ activist. He actually donated to having these silent funds. He actually donated, Jesse Peel, to the LGBTQ Center, which is here on campus. And this was a special donation. It's something called restricted funds. So when you're a nonprofit, as ECU Health is, you can have restricted and unrestricted. Unrestricted means I want to give my largesse to a cancer hospital because they're doing great, and they can spend it in the way they want. This was restricted. By that I mean it was specifically to transgender children, to getting them trans, to doing a sex change, if you will, specifically for that. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So in other words, I'm telling you that for profits, they turned their back on the people of Eastern North Carolina, and they had a restricted fund. Now you might say, well, how do you know that? Do you have receipts, et cetera? Not yet. But I do have this. I have advertisements on multiple platforms where Jesse Peel himself said that he was doing this. And then I have in meeting notes, in the emails, Jesse Peel was actually in strategy meetings recommending, by the way, that doctors be trained by the Goulds at Duke and UC Davis, or somewhere in at least UC Davis, yeah. So he's actually in there recommending that. That's extraordinary for a donor to have that top level access to clinicians. Again, in my notes and in the emails, I don't see any mental health providers. In other words, if you're following the guidelines, which are ridiculous to begin with, you're supposed to have a mental health screening. So I'm not saying that, and again, in the calls we didn't need that. So I want to stress a couple of things while Sandy, can you make this? Yeah. Okay. So ECU pediatricians, like I said, had no prior experience. You have them sharing studies, you have them going to conferences, etc. And yet on their websites, ladies and gentlemen, they made it sound like they were all experienced in doing this, and they actually were not. They were not experienced, and yet they were training all of these residents in family medicine, internal medicine, and pediatrics how to do this stuff. Okay? The top priority in these emails suggests that they had to fill the clinics. They were complaining in the emails they didn't have enough people. In other words, there was no demand. There's demand for autism. There's no demand for it. They had to generate the demand, and here's what they were worried about. They wanted enough funding so that they would make it too big to fail. In other words, they wanted to create that beacon of child sex change operations here, and to do that, they needed to have the people. They needed to have the demand. How'd they do that? How do you think they did that in schools? When you can refer a child directly from a school to a medical doctor, you have problems, right? And so the private donor, yeah, earmarked it. Again, if you go to the second page I have here, I have the stories that we wrote that have pictures of the email. You can also visit our website. We've got the QR code there. This is from a training. These slides are from a training from Fenway Health. I'm going to tell you what that training says. It says, for doctors at 3 years old to start asking parents about the child's sexual identity, and has the most disgusting, predatory questions I've ever read on how to do that. When a child's 11, the doctors are ordered to, or suggested to, get the parents out of the room, where the doctors can then manipulate the children into needing treatment. It's disgusting.
It is.
One more little pearl of wisdom that came from that training is this, and it's irresponsible, and it might give us a toehold into suing them. They tell the doctors to make sure not to tell the parents that transgenderism is something that can be outgrown. When the literature tells us that only 2% of teenagers that feel like they have gender dysphoria actually go on and 2% is high. I believe it's more like 0.05, okay? So if that's the case, then what? You're saying, well, Sloan, how would they be able to be sued? Maybe they didn't read that. They did read it because it was in the training that they're giving the residents. So they're training the residents that only 2% of teenagers go on to do that. But don't tell the parents. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the most reckless behavior that I've actually seen in any medical clinic. All of you should be terrified, absolutely terrified. This is one picture I'm going to give you. And they're not during surgery, okay? So we can all say that. But according to the American Pediatric Association, that's a different organization, and others, and studies, young children, 98% of them, when you get them young, they will go on to take the medications and some even the surgery. So, in other words, here's where we're going, and don't let them lie to you. Don't let them tell you any different. This is a 15-year-old who had for 2 years. This is just one. I was going to inundate you and bring you a bunch of pictures, but it is lunchtime. So, double mastectomy, and you can see hair on the arms, female. Duke is giving puberty blockers to 8-year-olds. Okay. They are giving double mastectomies to 11-year-olds and hysterectomies to 16-year-olds. Those are the facts. Those are the facts. And that's why we're here today. So I want to talk a little bit about the cover-up, because this lays at the feet of people that say they're totally against it. How could that be? Right? How could that be? First up, we've got Michael Walden, who is the dean of the medical school. He has lied repeatedly. In fact, he's been on a campaign of, I dare say, defamation that I resent very much about my reporting and that of my teams. He has said repeatedly that some right-wing conspiracy he's a victim of, and get this, hold on to your suspenders, that even talking about it, ladies and gentlemen, is akin to violence, and he, I have you know, will not put up with it. Meanwhile, look at what he's doing to children. Look at what he's overseeing, the degradation of care and of dignity to hardworking people who are on Medicare. They worked all their lives and they're going to have a doctor that is prioritizing this? No. This man is responsible. Chancellor Rogers, okay, in the emails, it shows that during a staff meeting, a staff member said, hey, I'm reading about this stuff in the news, okay? Where are we going to get information about that? He goes, no. Just, that's not going on, okay? So, zip it. And you need to stay on message about the mission of this hospital when you talk to the outside world. Now, do you know why he wants the staff members to stress the mission? I'll tell you why. Because when you take money from an outside donor, at the same time as you're turning your back on the public you're supposed to be serving, you're not on mission. You're on someone else's agenda, and you're being owned by that person. Next up, we've got Henry Hinton. I didn't know who this gentleman was until I heard that he was an elected conservative. He has a lot of people on, interviews a lot of people, politicians, etc., and claims to be stalwart against this practice. But is he? I just don't know. Because he kept calling me this woman and a liar. And of course, the very sexist, crazy right? Right. He started doing that, by the way, in October. And recently, he got all agenda for a full week when the entire world had its eyes on ECU and said, wow, can you believe they're doing all this stuff around the world, et cetera, but it's not happening here. And I think that ECU should sue Sloan Rattman, which would be a dream. I mean, discovery, hello, and was extremely reckless. And so I invited Henry, I don't see him here, but I wanted to say it to my face because Henry Hinton is responsible for 10 more months of putting children on the road to this. That's what Henry Hinton has done. I have asked repeatedly to be on Henry Hinton's show, but he'd rather defame me and tear apart my team while he upholds this. But if he's man enough to come in here, and if he's man enough to allow me onto his show, I'll go toe-to-toe with him any day, and you can take that to the bank. Next up, we've got Representative Tim Reeder. This is especially upsetting. I've heard that up until last week even when the emails have come out, that Timothy Reeder is still saying nothing to see here, this is not happening. I asked him, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, after all, he's your representative. He ran, in fact, to be your doctor in Raleigh, right? Okay, well, there's some sick stuff going on here and he's not curing it. He's making it worse, right? He's not the antidote. He's part of the problem. He has carried on a campaign from inside the General Assembly to discredit me, and I resent that. He's never told us what wasn't true, but he's been on a campaign to make sure that this isn't happening. Now I want to go a step further and talk about Tim Reeder. Dr. Reeder, I mean, he's got to be one of the hardest working reps in Raleigh because he's got a lot of jobs, He's an ECU doctor, he's a department head. Right here, right? So we've got that, but he's also president of an organization called the North Carolina Medical Society Foundation, okay? This is a lobbying group that's lobbying for stuff like Medicaid expansion. They're also lobbying against late-term abortion, and they're lobbying against the Youth Protection Act. In total, they are arguing for child sex change surgeries to be done on minors, and here's the kicker. Timothy Reeder's organization, the part they take exception to is parental consent. They do not want parents to be able to consent for abortion or for sex change surgery, period. That's Timothy Reeder's organization. If you had to take a wild guess, who do you think is the number one donor to that organization, or one of the number one donors? Pfizer. Who do you think, ladies and gentlemen, are putting up studies for these procedures? In fact, Pfizer came up with a study called the Toradol study. Patently ridiculous, widely disputed, ridiculous. It's science fiction rather than science. Let me tell you what it said. That doing this to children improves mental health. The regret of doing this is roughly around 2/3 at the 18-month point. The regret. And guess what? Insurance and Medicaid doesn't pay for detransitioning, ladies and gentlemen. You're on your own. Timothy Reeder is owned by ECU Health. Timothy Reeder is owned by Pfizer. And I believe that's his motivation. Lastly, Tim Moore. From our understanding, him and folks associated in his office want to discredit our reporting on ECU. So I'm going to ask Tim Reeder also, and Tim Moore, both. Let's have a chat. Like, I don't drink, but a beer summit. How about a sweet tea summit? Right? I'll go toe-to-toe with anyone. The facts are here. You have the facts as well. We'll be getting more out. We're going to post all 3,600 pages of those documents at the end of the week for everyone to see. You make your own decisions about that. But these people are so specious because they claim to think this is abhorrent as they uphold it. They claim that yours truly is a problem. I am a problem if you have something to hide. I am a problem if you're damaging health. I am a problem if if you make promises you're not gonna keep. I am a problem. If you're doing this to children, I am a problem.
right.
If you're trying to hunt me down, I am your worst nightmare. Better know that.
Praise the Lord.
Yes. So we have work to do, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you guys for being here. We've got Citizen Media News, Cajun County Young Republicans, Liberty Youth Initial, and the Republican National Hispanic Coalition. Thank you all, and we have more. And in a minute, I will take some questions, but make sure that you've got a packet. Make sure that you told people about what happened today, and I'll be back here in 2 weeks. I'll be back here in 2 weeks, and we are going to get it done. All right, so questions? Yes, sir.
You talked about different medical terms, castration, mastectomy, hysterectomy. Castration, we live in a rural community, and most people associate castration with cows and farming. And then you also mentioned chemical. Could you describe what castration means for both male and female?
Yeah.
The physical, the chemical, and also, I know it's a basic question, but can you describe what a mastectomy is and what a hysterectomy is?
Yes, okay, so and I'm not a doctor, so, that's fine, okay. These gentlemen are leaving because they have to eat lunch and they don't want to hear this. Okay, so a mastectomy is something that it can be life-saving for men and women who suffer from breast cancer or who have a very high risk of having that. And it's chopping the breasts off, for lack of a better term. You see it here, right? A hysterectomy would be, and I have limited knowledge, so my understanding is removing, stuff, female stuff, uterus.
It could be partial on the uterus, or if it's total, it's uterus and the ovaries.
Okay, uterus and ovaries removal. The other stuff, I'll be honest with you, the surgeries, it's pretty gruesome, and I deliberately have avoided seeing them, but it is cutting things off of men.
And chemically, like a chemical castration.
I was going to talk about that. So I want to tell you about a guy named Alan Turing. You ever heard of him? Code breaker. Back in World War II, a Brit. Saved a lot of lives. He was gay. And what they did, yeah, they had a movie about this. What they did was they gave Alan Turing, they said, look, you can go to prison, or we'll give you chemical castration drugs. And he chose the chemical castration drug, thinking that it would set him free. He killed himself within 2 years. It took away his will to live. It took away everything. From what I understand, it shrivels your ganglions to the point where you have to have surgery. And I think it can happen within 9 months or so, right? And so if they're giving the drugs to a 13-year-old, it probably will happen. He killed himself. And let me tell you what happened. Gordon Brown, who was the prime minister at that time, well, not at that time, but many years later, I believe around 2009, if memory serves me correct, came out and did the right thing and apologized for the nation for doing that to Alan Turing. The Queen came out, pardoned him, and did the same thing. New York Times, The Guardian, everyone said, I believe it was 2012, everyone said, wow, that they would do that to somebody is a terrible thing. That they would do that to a gay person. Let me tell you what happens to a 13-year-old effeminate male that's probably gay. They get the same treatment as Alan Turing right over there. The same inhumane treatment right over there. How was that any better? Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever heard of Chloe Cole?
Yes, I have.
Well, she's a great, great example of what you're talking about right now. And those of you that have not heard her, she is a trans. And the operation was done when she was 12 years old. Her parents agreed to it. The doctors told the parents that if you don't let her have this, she will kill herself. So the parents were petrified that she might kill herself, and they gave in to the doctor. Well, now she's speaking out. She went to the nation's capital, spoke out, and is telling the world who will listen, my life is ruined. I can't have children. Now she's regretting, just like you're saying. She regrets that she ever had that surgery. And now she wants to marry because now she wants to be what God made her, a girl, but she's not capable of having children or anything. She's crying out. Fox News was the only news outlet that would allow her to interview. She went to the nation's capital, and it was a few reporters that were there who got her testimony out. She would be a good one to go with
Yeah.
you.
Well, you see, when you are doing this to an 8-year-old or 12-year-old before they have had a sexual experience, they cannot conceive of life with children.
Right.
They don't know what they are. And I'm persuaded that that's exactly why they're doing it in younger. Why would they be giving a puberty blocker to an 8-year-old? Do you think they can consent for that? No. And I'm telling you, and I have a lot of folks that say the parent should be in jail. And okay, yeah, I think if you take your kids there to do that, you should be. That's just my personal opinion. But what we have folks that are cooperating with us from several of these schools, and what they're saying is that a mother can bring her 7-year-old in or 8-year-old in, or maybe they're not eating right or whatever, and can be told, well, this is just a symptom of something we call gender dysphoria, and then goes into it. This is highly, we object to all this because it's predatory, it's permanent, and it's based on lies.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any groups or parents or people getting together and suing these people for assault or for, I mean,
Yeah.
clearly.
Well, here's the problem. I'm going to be honest with you. We have the AMA, okay, also Timothy Reader, okay, and other groups, because this is politics. So this is a political sacrifice for our children, and some of you have said it's abortion when the kids are actually full grown, right, of the soul. This is the problem, is that they'll say, well, and this is why knowing the intricacies is so important. They'll say, well, we're going on medical standards. The medical standards is there ain't no medical standards, right? So then how do you sue them? The thing that I was thinking about, and that's why I'm saying, is that if you have in your own literature that you're giving your residents that 2%, okay, carry this throughout. I have the training packet. I've got the emails. You're telling them that, and you're also telling them, don't tell them that. There's a lawsuit. Yes, sir.
I was the first president of the North Carolina Autistic Children's Society. My jurisdiction was everything east of the 95, from South Carolina to Virginia. So I know all about everything that you're talking about. And the one thing I can tell you is that the whole community doesn't give a damn about the children. It's all about
That's
money.
it.
And I know that for a fact because I was enthralled in all of this. And there is an agenda, but I ain't got time to get into it. But the fact of the matter is, I know for a fact they don't care about the children.
That's right.
They care nothing about the children.
At all.
There's
My
evidence.
responsibility was to make sure that the professionals did their job. And they didn't really care about placing the kids. It was all about everything that you're trying to point out. So this has been a problem going back, what, 50 years?
A long time. Since my brother.
This is not a new problem. What it's been a step by step by step. And your children don't belong to you because Hillary Clinton said that. They belong to the community.
The village idiot.
Well,
Yeah, belong to the community.
yeah.
So what you've been doing, you've been getting an indoctrination, which I know from the beginning because I had to know a lot of doctors personally. Plus the fact his brother was diagnosed as autistic, so I was in the middle of it.
And
And
they're
I
going to
knew a lot of
the,
doctors all across the country.
Yeah.
and they're going to the rural areas for the testing, because if you
Was
look at,
Medicaid. So,
yeah, you look
pretty
at
much.
most of Africa, they don't even want a Bill Gates or anything, because Bill Gates used Africa for his test, and
Right. Yes, sir.
yeah.
Well, we have Fisher Scientific here well, we'll get into that later, but yes.
So in recent months, the North Carolina DPI, our legislators, as well as, the DHHS, they've been patting themselves on the back, saying that they're gonna put more counselors in schools, they're going to, because we've expanded Medicaid, and now we're gonna have telemedicine, as you were speaking to, in several schools. Do you have any proof that that is going to be a direct link to ECU and to these clinics happening within our schools to get them into these gender transition clinics?
That's an excellent question. So the question is the DPI, so Department of Public Instruction in the state. So quite frankly, the State Department of Ed and the State Health Department, they merged and basically became one in 2020 when no one was looking. You might say, well, that was because of COVID. Nah, it was baked in before that. The Republicans, all brought to us by the Republicans, we're not going to be political here, but I'm just telling you, that's the party in charge, right? They brought us clinics in every school. Almost all of them are pushing psychologists in every school, so mental health clinic in every school. ECU, most definitely, they're involved with just straight up healthcare in at least 5 counties and growing. And telehealth, I mean, so if you're putting a child in a room by themselves, or they can be groomed by a healthcare practitioner, you've got a problem. Duke is one of the worst offenders. They are partnering directly with DHHS with 168 schools, and they've got doctors who on video saying, yeah, we give puberty blockers to 8-year-olds. And they are very upfront. We've got to get to as many kids as we can. It's important for us to get all on video. So they are coming, ladies and gentlemen, for your children. And I'll tell you, if you're a single parent household, or you've got, you're barely scraping by, and you've got parents that they're just hanging on by their claws, right? They can't do a private school, whatever. This is like shooting fish in a barrel, and they know it. This is the most significant human rights crisis right in our own backyard.
Yes, it is.
The Holocaust started with doctors and nurses, and don't tell me that's hyperbole. I'm Jewish, and I know. What we're looking at is a lot like the things we saw go on before that, whether it's the indoctrination, the divisiveness, and bringing the medical part in it. Look, eugenics. North Carolina was the last state to outlaw eugenics. I think it happened in the 70s, right? And it started where they were saying, look, it's best if the mentally infirm do not reproduce. They got everybody to say, okay, we'll buy up on that. Then the next thing you know, they were sterilizing people because the color of their skin, that's what we're looking at here. Yes, ma'am.
And Dane Wicker at Duke that talks about how they're trying to help these young people go through the correct puberty. Because in his own words, going through the wrong puberty is an awful experience. I don't know how he knows that.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's still got his testicles as far as I'm concerned. So Dane Wicker, who is a ghoul, quite frankly, from Duke, one of the doctors at Duke. Funny story, we'll get to that in a second. He looks at the camera and says, it's important that we're able to choose the right gender for these kids.
Wow.
And the right puberty for them to go through. Dane Wicker, provided training for Dr. Timothy Reeder's Physician Leadership Series a couple years ago. Dane Wicker and the same doctor, actually that's where I got the video of the doctor saying, we provide gender affirming care for, which is ridiculous. We provide puberty blockers for 8-year-olds. Said it, the North Carolina Medical Society Physician Leadership Training, online, probably gone now. That's the organization that Tim Rear leads. He wasn't in the video, but that's his organization. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you guys, would it shock you to know that ECU took down all these web pages? Would it shock you to know that Duke took down? Would it shock you to know that UNC took them all down? If I'm a liar, prove it. Yes, sir.
Where is all the funding coming from? Because online gaming is promoting it. social media, everybody's promoting. I mean, there's massive amounts of money coming.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't say because I haven't investigated, all of it. He's asking where the money is coming from for all this. What we were very surprised at, we thought that maybe this was federal funding. Because Biden is gunning for this. So we thought for sure we'd find that. That's not what we found here. In fact, this is the first look on the inside of a place. We have just shown the world the classroom to operating room pipeline, and we did it right here. Right here. So we know what they're trying to do. They're trying to get more people. This is a private grant. Can you imagine taking a private grant and commandeering 3 departments at a state hospital? There's only 2 public medical schools in North Carolina, UNC and this one. This one has been bought and paid for, ladies and gentlemen, with somebody's money to harm children. And this man has made it happen. This one has done absolutely nothing, total derelict. This one is, these 2 are making it absolutely worse by trying to pin the problem on us. And this guy, who's House Speaker, he's not moving our bill.
If it's a public hospital,
Yeah,
how do they turn a profit?
well, I mean, you're not supposed to, but I mean, look, I don't know, but I do, here's what I do know. I do know this hospital has been criticized by Dale Falwell, Treasurer Falwell. I do know the hospital, yes.
What'd you say about that?
I do know that the hospital over the years has been criticized by people who know a little something about the finances, and that would be Treasurer Falwell in his capacity as state treasurer. Yes, and I do know that there have been other representatives who have queried, where's the money? I do know that people on the inside of the hospital are saying, where's the money? I'm doing the job of 10 men or 10 women in here. Where the heck is the money? Where the heck are the people? I don't know, but I do know about a big ass mansion, and I do know about a big old football stadium. Yes, Michelle?
You might remember 2.5 years ago that we talked with a representative from DPI who actually stated that the money that they were going to be receiving from the federal government, which we had requested that they not accept, when this is when we were talking about CRT and the DEI and all of that, he said, well, we're gonna kind of, we're not gonna use it for CRT, we're gonna use it for mental health clinics in the school, and that was 2.5 years ago. So we have that from someone on the inside of the DPI.
We did. So Jamie Falkenberry is the alleged Republican, probably a trans Republican, the right-hand man of Catherine Truitt, who's married to a lobbyist. You'll remember him from the Dan Forest administration. He's married to a lobbyist for some of the products they're talking about. And when you got a guy right there that's, making money for his household, suggesting all these things at our children's expense, I mean, we can understand that. With the corruption in Raleigh, and I live there, is deep. It's deep. Deep state, deep state. That's why I'm one of the people. One more?
I'm retired military.
Thank you
I've
for your
been,
service.
thanks. I've been to 65 countries around the world. Spent a lot of time in the Middle East. And a lot of these procedures that you're talking about are procedures that I've gone over there to defend for, that they use as punishment and torture
right. That's
in the
right.
Middle East. That's a atrocious that we're doing to our own people.
And in 2019, North Carolina actually made it against the law to perform genital mutilation on women in response to what was happening in Sharia law in many of the Islamic communities in the United States. And it is now a law that you cannot participate in that.
Well, there's another loophole.
Right.
There's another loophole. Yes, ma'am.
We really need to focus on the bills and the law. I don't know what the status of all that, because I've gotten so much disinformation, or I don't know if it's even accurate information. But doing a bill like Tennessee and Kentucky to ban and stop this, that is what we have to have.
Let me explain to you. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to explain to you the law. The law is the Youth Protection Act, right? And so it's House Bill 808. So I'm going to tell you about this right quick. So House Bill 808 First of all, it had a preamble on it. Let me tell you why a preamble is important. When you know legislative intent, there's no ambiguity. You can enforce that law. So the preamble was stripped, the hormones were stripped, everything was stripped out of it, and a shell was passed, right? Now it's for the Senate to take up. I'm not here to speak to that, but I will say this. I have heard legislators talk about their reluctance to pass the bill because it may be, we might get sued for it, right? That's the problem when you expand Medicaid. When you expand Medicaid, then you're playing by somebody else's rules now, aren't we? We're in the Fourth Circuit, one of the most liberal circuits, judicially speaking. And so, the concern is that there'll be an injunction and we won't be able to have it anyway. I don't care. You don't care. Pass the bill, we'll worry about the rest later.
Well, that's what Tennessee's already, they've already challenged their bill. It's gonna get challenged and they.
Sure.
That's where, if you're talking about going to the grassroots, that's what we have to do. The people have got to pressure them to do the right thing.
Yes.
Because we are the ones that put them in and we can take them out. So therefore, if we go and to the people, if the leaders won't do it, then we will do it.
We have
And I
to.
need the
It's
church-
always a
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Or else we're gonna have to if we don't.
Let me tell you, we have
That's right.
petitions that I'm planning on delivering them at the end of the week to our
Well,
legislators.
we need everything we can get.
If-
I used to be the chair of the Republican Party in this county.
Okay.
And right now, the Republican Party, as far, and I'm not going to pass judgment on it, but they need to be doing more for the people, for the
Well,
grassroots.
you know what, and I will agree with you, and I'll say this. A lot of folks, by the way, what we're doing is not political. A lot of people come and say, Sloan, you're always going after Republicans, etc. The reason why is because, have you not heard at least one, maybe two or three of these folks say to trust them because they want to stamp this out? Have you not heard that? I haven't heard a Democrat say that. I've heard these guys, and so that's where my
It does get
fire.
political. It does, whether you like it or not, but it gets
Right.
political, but that's when the people have to step in and say, you're gonna do, I
Yeah.
don't care what your politics is. We've got to do the right thing.
One-
The legislators need to pass a strong law in this state, and if they get challenged, they've been challenged before.
I'm
They've
gonna
been
say-
challenged on a lot of
I
things.
look, I like what you're saying, and it comes to people, and by the way, I'm not one that goes and says, oh, they're politicians, they're lying. There are most politicians act in good faith. They're there for a reason. They want to serve, right? But a good politician acting in good faith would not be calling us the liar, would not be labeling us the problem. And these are not. These two are not.
Well, this Tim Reader, I do know, I just talked to him not very long ago, which he told me you were not telling him the truth, that, by the way. But
I rest my case.
Yeah, but nevertheless, I don't believe him now. And he is now telling people, this is not yesterday, I talked to someone at the GOP convention. Now he's telling people that they lied to him. He's trying to CYA. He is telling them that they have lied to him.
So at least that's a step in the right direction, so say approve it and sign this bill.
I have one more time for one more question. I'll talk to you afterwards.
No, real quick. Where can I donate to help support your research and?
That's a great question. Now we're talking, well, I'm so glad you asked. That take note, right there, please take a card. Yeah.
What's your website?
Thank you, edfirstnc.org. Sign up for the newsletter, and the truth that they don't want you to have, I will be back in 2 weeks, because I'm not abandoning you. We have just begun to fight.
Well, praise
We
God.
have just begun to
If you
fight.
donate $20, $50, if I donate $20, what can you do with that? What do you do with $100? Still
Get home to
A
mom.
new pair of shoes? No, I'm joking. Okay, well, let me tell you how the expenses are incurred. So that's a great question. This is a desert as far as media. Because why? Who pays for the advertisements? Right? So investigative journalism is the most expensive journalism you can do. And in fact, they just don't do it anymore, right? It's just not done. They're reporting and pontificating really on the happenings of the day, and not even accurately, might I add. So investigative journalism takes our team a lot of time, and so it will pay for that. But here's what we're working on. We're working on a way to quadruple our reach in the next 6 months. Why? Because of this. I mean, we can't just be talking amongst ourselves. To do that, okay? More platforms, more sharing, all of that. We're doing a major campaign here in Pitt County where we're sending out information to 10,000 voters. 10,000. And you know what's going to happen in 2 weeks from then? We're going to hit them again with 10,000 more.
Like Roku and Amazon TV.
And we are going to be on Roku and Amazon TV, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. So we are going to have our own shows. We already have them. We're going to spread that out. And, you know, even if you're able to give $50 or whatever and then say, gosh, I've got 10 hours a week for you, son. Such a big help. So thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm going to not answer that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you guys what to do on the ground. I'm just delivering the facts.
As far as legislation as well.
Legislation, I would do a mass calling on the legislation. I have had legislators say that they have not heard from anyone. I don't know if it's true or not, but, you know, make sure that you speak in a voice that can't be ignored. Yes, ma'am.
Years ago, I heard about an organization on campus in the Department of Home
She would know about that. Yeah.
And I was wondering if the status of sales from my greatest fear is that,
Yeah, it has.
with this president.
Yeah. And I'll be reporting on that in a little while. But yeah, I mean, so what you're talking about is a coordination between the campus back into the hospital, et cetera. Can I get assistance turning? Okay. All right, so I will be here, after, Michelle, are you gonna be here too?
Yes, I was gonna run and get the petition.
Please, yeah, please. And so great, I will communicate through channels on when I will be here again. Can I get you, excuse me, can you shut off?
Yes.
So thank you for joining the press conference. I'll be here in 2 weeks, and we're going to make this ground zero for change here across the nation, actually. So I want you to join me, and I want to, even as packed as this room is, I want it double next time.